get the girl, you get the diesel jeans, you get the watch, you get the apartment, you get the promotion. Like the high each time is smaller and smaller and smaller. But here's the thing. You have to work harder and harder and harder for a smaller and smaller and smaller reward. What does that pattern sound like? Addiction.
Khe Hy is the author of Rad Reads. From 2007 to 2015, he was a managing director at BlackRock, which I believe is the largest asset manager in the world.
You say BlackRock, it's instant respect. When was it that you started to kind of understand like the plaudits and the credit that I'm getting from being within this game? It's not actually the game I want to be playing.
There wasn't a moment, but it was kind of noticing that pattern and then projecting it 10 years forward. Look at the people that are 20 years on that path that have crushed it and ask yourself, do you want that life? Mr. Beast, he says, if anyone sees him in public, within 30 minutes, there's a crowd of 5,000 people around him because of social media. Think about that. You cannot go anywhere and be visibly seen.
If the 44-year-old Khe could go back and speak with that Khe, what would he tell him?
It's like, what would the 12-year-old Khe say to the 44-year-old Khe? I get teary-eyed when I think about it. The 12-year-old Khe will say to the 44.
Cool, so the Callum Johnson Show. I'm Callum, and on today's episode we have Khe Hy. Khe, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great. Good to be here again.
You know what? It's I'm gonna start by giving the audience this, which is obviously we had this plan for a little while, but then we actually met in person a few weeks ago, and so I think kind of seeing your story online and on Twitter. And just to give the audience some background, obviously you worked for a number of years on Wall Street, one of the youngest managing directors at BlackRock. You left that and started doing your newsletter, Rad Reads, bunch of subscribers now, and kind of built that to be its own successful thing. You've been featured on CNN, Bloomberg, the Wall Street Journal, CNBC. But so I was aware of that. And that sparked the interest. But then when we really met in person, and we only really spoke for 15, 20 minutes maybe. But there was just a number of things that you said that it stuck with me. And I thought about it later, which I feel is unique.
Oh.
Like, how many conversations do we have where you're you actually take something from it and it's on your mind later? It's still playing on your mind. So yeah, man, it's a pleasure to have you here.
Are you gonna say what they were for the audience?
You know what? I'll say it later.
Okay.
I'll say it later.
Oh, nice.
You have to leave them wanting a bit more. You can't give it all up front. So yeah, writer, creator, entrepreneur. And here's really where I wanna begin, which is obviously kind of your professional roots were on Wall Street. And even like I said in the intro, one of the youngest managing directors at BlackRock. Let's start here, which is, how did we even get to that point? What was the context for even reaching that? Because when I think about Wall Street, I think an incredibly competitive environment, ruthless in certain degree, a ton of work ethic, right? People are logging 100-hour weeks. And so within that environment and within that context, to be one of the youngest managing directors and to reach that level in a short space of time, relatively, right? What did it take to do that? What was the story of getting there? This episode is brought to you by Free Agency. If you want to take your career to the next level, Free Agency is a company that you should check out. They manage and represent talent in the tech industry, and they provide you with a dedicated talent agent to help you find, engage, and win top of market roles that will maximize your earning potential. No more leaving money on the table. Stop job searching alone and start building your dream career today with Free Agency. Anyway, back to the show.
Wow. So I'm going to start with a picture of a little boy. And so the little boy, little Khe, and, just this kind of shy, kind of really skinny. When I went to college, I weighed 138 pounds. So that's less than my sister weighs, or less than, a lot of people weigh. Yeah. And I was just this shy kid, and I just never felt like I belonged. And part of it was child of first generation immigrants, We were kind of lower middle class, grew up in the East Village in New York, and I didn't know it at the time, but I just wanted to belong. Like I wanted to belong with the cool kids. I wanted to belong with the kids in the neighborhood that were like everyone looked up to. I wanted to belong with the group that people were like, oh, this kid's smart. I wanted to belong with a group that's like, oh, this is the guy that gets the girls. And I didn't really have any role models for belonging because my parents came here in 73. I was born in 79. They barely spoke English when they got here. People always like, oh, you grew up watching 80s movies. I'm like, no, my parents didn't watch TV, so I didn't watch 80s movies. So I just wanted to belong. And I could take you on a bunch of meandering paths, but I think that subconsciously, I think that my antenna was always up. My antenna was always up is like, how am I going to fit in? How are people going to know who I am? And, I think that I didn't know it at the time, and there are different kind of markers of it, but, one of it was like, I want to be a sweet person. Like, I want to be a nice guy. And when you say that about, our conversation, like that is a prouder compliment than anything you can ever say on my resume. Right. And I really felt that as a kid, but I also wanted to make money. I wanted power. I wanted status. And so you could always think of this like really shy kid, and he just goes into the lab and he's just like looking around the world. It's like, okay, these people make the money. These people have the power. These people get the women. What do I need to do to make that a reality for myself? So I could give you the whole trajectory, but I'd just say like it meant working my ass off. My dad had this saying, we may not be the smartest, but we're the hardest working. So it's a conflicting statement that I have now. Like, would I tell my kids that? Probably not. But we may not be the smartest, but we're the hardest working. Work my ass off. Was very true. Was a very loyal and caring person. Wasn't a jerk. Didn't fuck people over. None of that stuff. And just kind of studied the world around me, studied how the games were played, studied what games people were playing. I'll give you like a really quick example. I used to speculate in comic books, and I was probably like 13 years old. And I was just like, wait a minute, you buy a comic book and then I see it at a flea market marked up by 5 times. Like what happened? What was so unique about that comic book? Then I was like, oh, it was the first appearance of, Cable or Wolverine or whatever. Like, okay, so like this as a kid, I'm like, if there's ever a comic book that has a first character come out in it, go just buy those. I didn't even read the comic books. I just like noticed this algorithm. I was like, oh, there's this game. And then I was speculating on comic books. I made a ton of money. And then I went long on Spawn. I don't know if you remember Spawn, that comic book.
It's familiar.
It's Image Comics. It was a bubble in comics. I went long at the top of the bubble and I lost all my money on comic books. So then I picked that up again. I was like Magic the Gathering. And then I learned how to make web pages and would go to the local florist. I'm like, hey, you need a website. And I'm like, I could teach you I could build you a website. I'm like $20 an hour. It's $20 an hour. I'm 15 years old in 1995 in New York. That's like $30 an hour today as a 15-year-old cash. And I'm just going around making web pages. And I'm like, oh, okay. So it turned out like the game, it was quite easy. Once you kind of stepped back, if you could see the game, and you had the work ethic, and then there's another part, the relationships that will come in later. Then I was like, oh, this is just the game, and just like how do you move the pieces around to get the outcome that you want?
Yeah, you know what's I think it's so relatable as like a young person, right? Because there's all these things that you want, like, but it's vague. Right. So even once you graduate university, I think the common thing is that a lot of people don't really know. They still don't know what they want to do. They know what they want. They know that they want money or like women or status, clothes, cars, all of these things. But even that, a lot of that is informed by what you're seeing from other people that you're seeing on, especially nowadays, right, with social media. You're seeing other people that are flexing on social media. And so you want that because that feels like success. And I think one thing that's interesting about you is just that journey of understanding that that wasn't it for you. Even when you talk about things being a game, when I think about a game, it's defined rules, right? And if you play within the rules and you know which areas to maximize and where you need to win, then you almost get the outsized returns. You win the game. And so if we think about the game of life, there was a process where you started to understand, where are the areas that I need to win in order for me to feel like I just won at the game of life? Mm-hmm. Not Wall Street anymore, or not getting to the best college. Like, how do I win at the game of life? I guess I want to begin, and I want to go over the point of like working on Wall Street, starting to get that level of accomplishment, right? Because BlackRock is a name. Like, you say BlackRock, it's instant respect, right? They don't even need to know what you do. It's just like, oh yeah, I work at BlackRock. Instant acknowledgement, respect, recognition. And so when was it that you started to kind of understand like the plaudits and the credit that I'm getting from being within this game, it's not actually the game I want to be playing? When did those realizations start to come about?
Yeah, I mean, I think you mentioned it earlier. It's like we're all playing these games because we want the prize, right? And so again, I call a spade. Like a nerdy kid that couldn't get laid in high school, I'm like, what's the prize? Is I want to have a date, like, I want to get laid, like that. That's the prize,
yeah,
right? And so that's the thing. And the prizes, they kind of keep getting, they keep moving, right? The goal line keeps moving. So, you get, I remember the first time I bought, it was like diesel jeans. Like, I saved up money. I got like $200 diesel jeans. That was crazy for, my parents be like, no, like you're Old Navy for life. I'm like, no. I want diesel jeans, right? So you save up, you get the jeans, And I think as my career went on, I was hitting all the markers, right? I bought my first apartment in the East Village when I was 28 years old, right? And it had a swimming pool on the roof, right? In the East Village, right? Think about that. That's, and you get promoted and people are like, oh, you're a managing director, like on my honeymoon, we went to the islands and the little huts in Bora Bora, right? And you're doing all these things because you think that constitutes winning the game. But here's the thing. I want you and whoever's watching and listening to think back. Like, I was thinking about this on my way over. The first car that I got, and I'm a New Yorker, so cars don't have the same symbolism as like if I grew up in the suburbs. But when I was 19, my parents gave me their old car. It was a salmon, like pinkish Honda. It must have been like a 96 Honda station wagon. So I'm this college kid with a salmon colored Honda station wagon. Yeah. And I was so happy. Why? It was free. Why? They paid the insurance. We could now go on road trips. We could go see concerts. We had all this newfound freedom for this car that probably was worth like $3,000 at the time. Today, I'm not a car person. I drive a 5-year-old Acura. I don't give two shits of, like, there's no emotional attachment to it. That car's so much more expensive, so much nicer than that car. It doesn't even move me. If I were to get a Tesla, yeah, I'd get like a little bump of happiness, enjoyment while I'm in it. But that's the thing. The novelty of all these things fades, right? So if you think about that, right? So you go back, you're like, oh, like get the girl, get the diesel jeans, you get the watch, you get the apartment, get the promotion. Like the high each time is smaller and smaller and smaller. But here's the thing. You have to work harder and harder and harder for a smaller and smaller and smaller reward. So if you want to just maintain your reward, you got to work even harder. What does that pattern sound like? Addiction. Right? That's the pattern of addiction, where the reward gets smaller, but you want to maintain the baseline of the reward. So you need so much more of the drug, in this case, recognition, success, however you want to call it. And so I felt really lucky because in one way, the pace of my success got me to experience a lot of that earlier, right? I became a managing director at 31, and the average age is probably 40. So I got like 9 years of like a preview, so to speak. I just got married. I didn't have kids. So I got a preview of it. I also, through some act of God or grace, have always been a pretty self-aware person. And so when I noticed this addiction thing happening, I was just starting to say to myself, something seems fishy about this game. This game, as my daughter would say, this game is sus. I'm like, something's off here. And then I would look at people who were 10 years older than me, 15 years older than me. And they had continued on that trajectory. Millions of multi-millions, 2 homes, second home in the mountains. These are all New Yorkers. 2 X5s. Kids go to summer camps that cost $20,000. And I'm like, all of that could be handed to you, but like always on their phones, never present. Every vacation's a working vacation. Fat, bald, like divorced. Not everyone, obviously, but, and I said to myself, like, if that's, like, I know I can excel at that level, I don't want the prize. And I'm not knocking that prize, because that prize it's a great life. It is a great, great high status Western life. I'm not knocking that. It just wasn't for me. And I was like, I didn't know what it was for me, but I knew that it wasn't that. And so that was I forgot the original question, but that was kind of how it started. There wasn't a moment, but it was kind of noticing that pattern and then projecting it 10 years forward. I always say, like, think about the success of the people. Think about the lives of the people that have the success you're striving for, right? So I was thinking about Mr. Beast. He says, if anyone sees him in public, within 30 minutes, there's a crowd of 5,000 people around him because of social media. Think about that. You cannot go anywhere and be visibly seen. Anyone, he was talking about in Chile. He's not talking about Midtown Manhattan. In Chile, 30 minutes within one person seeing you, there's thousands of people swarming you. Look, I think I have so much admiration for Mr. Beast, so much respect for what he's done. He'd have to, well, what does he do? Like, just keep gating himself in with other famous friends? He's 25 years old. We're gonna like not come to a happy hour with friends because 20,000, he's gonna cause a Khe Hy riot, right? And so think about that. Maybe you want to be a YouTuber. Maybe you want to be an influencer, like a Kardashian style influencer. Maybe you want to be a Wall Street managing director. Maybe you want to be a partner at a hedge fund, right? Just look at the trade-offs that people are making. Yeah, you're gonna get a huge reward. And the thing about all those roles that I just described, they have very high status. Right? People want to be a YouTuber more than going to like being an astronaut. So anyone listening, think about that. Like whatever path you're on, look at the people that are 20 years on that path that have crushed it, and ask yourself, do you want that life? Obviously, the good parts of that life, but think about the bad parts. And usually, it's damaged relationships, lack of privacy. You can't trust people. Because everyone wants something from you. Just think about that. And if you want to go, more power to you. But what a tragedy it would be if you got there, you sacrificed 20 years of your life, and you're like, this shit sucks. Why didn't anyone tell me? Right? That's it, right?
That is a crazy feeling, right? Like you spend decades, a lot of the times, right, when people achieve the thing that they thought they always wanted, in pursuit of this prize. And then you can almost visualize it in your mind. Like you're holding this box, it's got everything you wanted in it. And you open it, everything is there, exactly in the way that you envisioned it. But the feeling, the life isn't what you want. And so I just think it's powerful. And it's powerful that you can put words to it and you can put experience to it. I guess, and you know what, I want to play the other side of the angle. I want to play devil's advocate. And I want to say, if for the person that's thinking, and it's funny that you mentioned the Kai Cenat thing, right? Because that is insane, right? Like his presence in New York caused a riot. Like even to just say that is insane.
And he might go to jail.
Yeah. Oh, you got arrested for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, but for the person that's like, and I almost think about what you were saying at the beginning about belonging is, if we go even deeper with that, it's like the feeling that people care about you. That when you walk in a room, that people are actually, there's an excitement, or there's a caring, there's a want to like understand you. Like that's the feeling that we want, right? Yeah. And so I can see for that person, you would look at a Khe Hy and the views that he gets online, the likes that he gets on all of his posts, the events that he gets invited to, the reaction that he gets when he walks into a room. And for the person that's in that spot where they're not getting any of that, you would look at that person and be like, I want to be just like him. What he has is perfect. Yeah. And so for that person, I guess my question to you is like, what would you say the alternative is? And to a certain degree, do they almost have to go and get the accolades and follow the path and receive it all to just find out that it's actually not what they expected? Like, is that the alternative, or is there another way?
Yeah. Well, experience is the best teacher, right? There's this quote by Jim Carrey that says, everyone wants to be rich and famous until they become rich and famous, right? And anyone hears that quote, myself included, you're like, go fuck yourself, rich and famous guy, right? And so, no, I think experience is the best teacher. And I think this is the beauty of this movement that we're in with podcasts and influence, kind of behind the scenes type stuff. Is like, you see a lot of the fake stuff, the flexes and all that, but a lot of people are straight up honest. Like that story I told you about Mr. Beast, like he just said that on the Colin and Samir show, right? It's not, it's just, you could, the data is there for you, right? So I think that I'll never tell anyone what they should or shouldn't do. Like that, I am the sum product of all of my decisions, both good and bad. And that brought me to this seat right now, right? And who am I to say? What I can share with people is the things that I wish I had learned. And so actually one thing that I've really been reflecting on is, there's the FIRE movement, financial independence, retire early. I'm not a big believer in that, but I am a very aggressive investor. And in my early years, I was a pretty aggressive saver. So I was kind of living, and I had the high income, so that's like gasoline on it. And so it's not that I made a lot of sacrifices, but I lived that lifestyle for 20 years. And, by the time I hit 30, I had saved enough for both of my kids' college educations. They weren't born yet. And I had saved enough to buy a house. I still don't own a house, but I had that apartment that I sold. And so I will say, in like a Western capitalist world, like building a strong financial base in your 20s is really fucking powerful. The challenge is that it's very hard to step off. Back to the addiction thing, right? Even this morning, my daughter, she's 9, she goes, Daddy, if you still worked on BlackRock, do you think I'd have my own bedroom? Because we have a 3-bedroom house in Manhattan Beach. And we rent, and for full transparency, my rent's $9,000. It's a pretty penny, right? We live by the beach. It's a nice house. But the trade-off is that my kids share a room. That's the trade-off we made. And so I'm there listening to my daughter, and she's like doing the math, because she always hears like, well, Daddy used to do this, Daddy used to do that. One time she saw this huge house. She's like, she said, can we live in that house? I'm like, yeah, you'd never see me. I'd be working all the time. And she's like, that's okay. So I'm just, I go back to saying that like there is tremendous value to building up a financial base in a Western capitalist world in your 20s, especially in the US, where there's not a lot of safety nets, right? And so I'm not for that FIRE movement of like sacrificing everything, but I am like, be responsible, maybe take a shittier job, build that financial base. But the thing is, you got to know when to step off, because it tastes so good, right? You get so used to it when all your friends are in the country club and you're not. If you don't feel strong and firm about your identity and your social standing, you're going to feel left out. All the social events in my town happen in the country club. I'm not a part of it. we get left out of many social events. That's a choice that we're okay with. And many listeners are probably like, oh, this is like super rich people problem. But regardless, like when you stay on a path that has some kind of path of status, when you get off of it, you will be rejected by a group of people. It's the same group you were trying to win over. Not all. And the ones that stick around are your true friends. And so back to your question, what do I say to a young person? Like, I definitely don't, I'm a lot more chill about, we haven't talked about lifestyle design a lot. I'm a lot more chill about how I live my life, but like a lot of it was the result of like a strong decade of like hard fucking work, like 80 hours a week. So I look at you young podcast hustlers, we were doing it on Wall Street, y'all are doing it on YouTube and so on. That's real. Like, and you can do it there because you have your health, you don't have kids, you may not be married, right? You only have yourself to think about. You can record 3 podcast episodes a week. When you have 2 kids and a wife and, a lot of other commitments, it might not be so easy. The one thing that I would say, actually there's 2 things that I would say that I think can help someone on that journey. The first one is the inner critic. So the chatter in your head, right? And so if you're listening to this, I want you to think of like, is that chatter when you're like, even right now, I'm like, am I talking too much? Am I using my hands enough? Not enough? Is this interesting? Did I tell the same story twice? That chatter, it actually is just chatter, right? And I know someone listening is like, I need that negative chatter to motivate me. And I challenge you of like, I don't think you need it. I think you can get the same results that you want. Well, I say like with the stern Asian father chatter, where they just look down on you. Like, really? You're going to get on Reddit now? Versus like, you fucking idiot. I can't believe you're on Reddit. You're wasting your time. This person's doing so much more than you. You'll never be a success. You piece of shit. You piece of shit. You're a piece of shit. Work harder, work harder, work harder. Right? So if you got that inner critic that's nasty, and I'm assuming many of your listeners do because driven people tend to have very harsh inner critics. So that would be the first thing. And the second thing I tell you, this is a more recent discovery, is I would say to anyone listening to this, just know that you are loved unconditionally. Meaning that like, for example, you like, I love you as a human, as a friend. And if this episode has 1 view or 1 million views, my love for you doesn't change. Because my love for you is unconditional relative to this podcast, relative to anything, unless you cause me or my family harm. My love for you is unconditional. And what a freeing way to like operate in the world where it's like, you don't owe me anything. I just show up with you with love. I love you as my fellow human. And so I think, and this is going back, this is why I always start with like that he felt that he wasn't worthy of love. And so that young Khe did all that hustling to be worthy of other people's love. And to this day, I still don't feel I've gotten a lot better. And I can't even use words to describe it because a lot of it is just, it's so in your body, it's nonverbal, right? People, my kids tell me they love me all the time. I believe them. I have a very strong, healthy relationship with my wife. But there's something about it. It's like, I'm not a good person. Like people don't they're going to see the real me, or I'm going to fuck up or something like that. And so I'm telling everyone, like, keep your motivation, keep your drive, keep your ambition, but also know that irrespective of whatever outcome, good or bad, that you are loved. I love you as a fellow human. The people around you love you. Your parents, presumably, your friends, so on, they don't love you because you get tons of TikTok views. They love you because you're you, right? And again, I think a lot of people miss the plot on that because they're like, when I get the views, then like, it's the thing you said, that they want that feeling of Khe Hy. It's like, if you want friends who love you, you don't need to become a YouTuber. There's a much easier route to having friends who love you than becoming a YouTuber. Right. And so that's some of the advice that I would give some of the younger folks listening.
Yeah. That is such a powerful, like that would be such a powerful foundation for a life to have. If you started, even if you're like in your teenage years, early 20s, and your basis, your mindset your starting point was I'm loved. Because how many of us are doing things just to prove ourselves, just so I can feel like I'm this person. And if anything, the reason why the dopamine hit needs to get greater and greater, it has to be even more indisputable. And that's why you need to raise through the positions and the status and up the hierarchy. Because then it can prove, it's more proof. And that's the only way that you can actually feel satisfied. But to your point, it's fleeting. It's fleeting.
And it's shallow, right? I mean, look at Khe Hy. And again, I know nothing about him other than he started a riot a few blocks from here last Friday. He had hundreds of, I don't know how many people were there, 20,000 people. They're fawning over him, but there's a hollowness. Like they're breaking cars and they're there for the merch, they're there for the clout. Like, do they love Khe? Is that the love, or would you want your mom, your sister, your girlfriend, your kids to love you, right? And so it's just it's an interesting thing, because it goes back to we all want this, to know that we are loved, and but when if we intellectualize it, is a photo with 200 likes love? Right? It feels like love in that moment, right? It feels like dopamine. It feels good, right? But I think that there's more, and I think it comes with age, that you start to appreciate these differences, right? Like, I'm 44 now. It's what makes me happy now is just seeing my friends for a 3-hour dinner. Doesn't happen that often. We all got young kids. We all live in different parts of the world. I just see my friends for a couple hours. My cup is full. And it's 50,000 email and newsletter follow. Great. Yeah. That has a path, that has its lane, right? The lane for that is it's a business with business interests, and you do that. But it doesn't subsume everything you do, right? My good friends, they don't care if my email list has 50,000, 200,000, or a million. They don't give a fuck. It doesn't mean anything to them, right? The love that we have for each other is completely independent of the number of subscribers that I have on my email list, right? They're happy if my business does well, but again, it's not because of the clout. It's because I feel happy about it.
The thought that comes to my mind as you're speaking is, and I felt this 100%, is a lot of us are starting from a deficit. And what I mean is, it's almost like if you think of a hole, there's something that's missing, and the accomplishments and the accolades, it's like me trying to pour in dirt into the hole. And as I'm pouring in dirt, I'm feeling okay, I'm making progress. I'm feeling those feelings that I want. And one of the things you mentioned is the inner critic. And that's so important, right? Because we all have this chatter. And I don't care how confident you are. It's there for everyone. There's always the little voice of doubt that's telling you, oh, you can't do this, or how do you look in this situation? And I think it's a really powerful thing. It genuinely stops people from living the life that they want, a life that would fill them with happiness, and it would be something that they dream of, right? And so where my mind goes is that if you can start to change that conversation, you can start to change the outcomes for yourself. And then I guess the next step is okay, how do I start to change that inner dialogue? How do I start to change that conversation? Is that something that you've been able to do? Even if you can change it by a single degree, a single percentage point, it can have such large impacts in your life. And it's how does someone go about just making that inner critic just a tad, just a little bit kinder?
Yeah.
How do they do it?
So much of it, thoughts are just thought. I think I saw it the other day. We have 260,000 thoughts per day. And how many of those thoughts are really actionable, right? 20. right? Like, what am I going to eat right now? Should I work on this thing, right? But then you're like, oh, like, why does this person have more followers than me? Like, oh, am I safe? Does this person on the subway look at me funny? Am I going to be late to this meeting, right? So thoughts, so there's a real power of being able to observe your thoughts. So basically quiet your mind, right? And that's kind of the thing that for me has been one of the most freeing, joyful parts of my life, is that everything, like the volume in my head is just so much more quiet. And we could talk about how we've gotten there. There's this great analogy that I heard someone say that they were in a rural part of Asia, and they were sleeping in this hut, kind of very rural, and all the stray dogs were just howling all night. And then for some reason, they would stop for 20 minutes. And then they would start howling. Our minds is like that. It's just howling stray dogs all the time, especially now with phones. But if you can just get a taste of that 20 minutes of a break, you start to see that like your mind is a pack of howling stray dogs. And so, I mean, I'm sure I won't be the first. I'm not the first, and I won't be the last that says it on your podcast. Is like the first thing to do is observe your thoughts, and that's mindfulness meditation. I've meditated 40 minutes a day for a decade now, and so I can't tell you when it started to work, but I can tell you this: I have a huge fear of death. I have a huge fear of losing loved ones. I think it's a very natural fear of folks. Something I've thought about my whole life. That's another motivating force that we could talk about. And almost a year and a month ago to this date, one of my best friends got killed in a car crash. And I know, and I grieved a lot. I'm still grieving. But I also know that I was able to find a peace in it, in her death. And I don't, for sure, one of the things is meditation. And I always say meditation, what I've always described it, is the ability to give yourself a warm hug on command. And so I say that because the chatter, they're thoughts, right? And if you stare at the thoughts, if you observe them, eventually they're nothing. They just dissolve. Right? And that's the power of mindfulness, the power of journaling, that's why I really encourage people to take walks without headphones. Like I walked from the subway here with I want to get in the right, calm state of mind. I was listening to a great podcast on the train over, but I really want to settle my mind and I come in, just be fully present with you. And so that would be one of them, is observing your thoughts. A very simple one is if you just close your eyes, pay attention to your breath, and then as a thought comes in, just say, without any judgment, thinking. Just observe that you're thinking. And then what we'll start is, if you've never meditated before, it's going to be thinking. Then maybe in a year, it'll be like thinking. Then in 10 years, it might be thinking. 20 years, maybe it doesn't even start with a thought. Right? And what happens with thought is it's like our minds are vacuums, and so thoughts they flood the system, right? That's what separates us from the animal kingdom, right? That's why our dogs can just lay on the ground doing nothing for 20 straight hours. Yeah. And we're like, should I be listening to a podcast? Should I be washing the dishes? So getting to observe your thoughts, observing them without judgment. Again, meditation is a big one. Mindfulness is a big one. But again, you can just practice observing your thoughts. You can do it while you're walking. Be like, oh, how curious. I'm thinking about how nervous I am for this podcast. Oh, how curious. I'm thinking about how hungry. It's a very powerful thing to observe your thoughts when you're fasting, because you start to really have to interact with the emotions of hunger, not the physical need of hunger. And they're two very separate things. Anyway, I digress. So that would be one way, is to really learn to observe your thoughts. Again, I don't want to come in and evangelize my spiritual practices. I'll just share that, like, for me, a big part of it is meditation, to a lesser extent, breath work. I've dabbled in psychedelics, but that's kind of the meditation is really the anchor for me.
Yeah. You know, I said it at the beginning. I said we spoke at an event a few weeks ago, and I kind of hearkened to there was a few things that you said that stuck with me and that I'd been thinking about since, and I'm going to reveal one of them now, which is, obviously you have your newsletter, and I think in your newsletter you talk a lot about productivity. And something that you said, and I'm not going to get your exact wording verbatim, but I even made a mental note of it in the moment that you said it, which is, a lot of this productivity stuff, it can come from a scarcity mindset. This belief that I need to maximize every single minute and make all of these micro adjustments so that I can maximize every living moment that I have. It actually it's not beneficial. There's a point where it's actually negative returns. And it's actually rooted in deep scarcity. It's feeling like you're going to miss out on something if not everything is maximized. And I think when you were talking about meditation, I think one of the beauties, because I've been meditating every day, and I only do about 10 to 20 minutes at the moment, but it has been transformative. And the reason it's transformative, because it just reminds me that I have everything I need right now. A lot of the best feelings that we have as humans, it's actually, and we live in an age with so much technology and all of these conveniences and all of these things and these dopamine hits that we can get at any moment. But the things that tend to give us the most joy, it's the original things that we did when we were like cavemen. Mm-hmm. It's like having a community around you, or even being in like nature, right? It's the original things. And I think meditation really illustrates it, which is like just being able to control your breath and be silent can be one of the most powerful feelings. And for anyone that has meditated consistently, there's sometimes you'll emerge from like a meditation session and you will feel so amazing just from breathing in oxygen for like 20 minutes. Mm-hmm. Like, isn't that incredible when you think about all of the things that we can do today? But the first thing we did when we were born, we started breathing. That feeling trumps everything else. Mm-hmm. It's incredible.
And there's this concept, I forgot exactly what's like, unexplainable happiness. Is like, if you ever watch someone who meditates a lot, and I haven't even gotten to this point, the way they eat so slowly, and you can almost see like every flavor just like permeating their taste buds, and then the digestive process going through, and there's this like very, very like delicate smile like that they have. And I think that's a very apt metaphor for life, right? The walk from the train to here is a very happy, joyful walk. It's joyful because I know I'm like walking towards something exciting, but it's just like, oh, you look around like, oh, cool tattoos, like pretty building. The light is shining a certain way. Thank God it's not too humid, you know? And I really have come to believe, and I know that younger listeners are going to call bullshit on what I'm about to say, but just like keep it in your back pocket. Just hold it for when you're ready. Right? Because I really believe that a happy life is just stringing together these tiny moments of presence. It's just that I just took a delicious sip of water because it's hot out here, not in the studio, but it's hot in New York. It's just that one sip was so delightful, right? And so I believe that with age, you start to see that happiness is not like going to the Super Bowl or Coachella. Like, those things are nice, but they're fleeting just like everything else. But what is not fleeting is how you interact in that moment, when you're driving in your car, when you're drinking a sip of water, when you're eating not a fancy meal, you're eating just your ordinary meal, when you're washing the dishes, when you know, hug your child, right? That, you know, this like these tiny moments, you string them together for a lifetime. That is a happy life.
Yeah.
And you can have the Coachellas in that. You can have the parties. You can have the 40th blowouts. You can have fancy cars, but know that it's probably going to be those tiny moments way more than the car.
Yeah. And it's funny, I actually wrote that there's a note in my phone where I said that, where the best moments are like the quiet moments. And even when you achieve success in something and you're striving and you're in pursuit of this thing that you want, a lot of the times the best feelings have actually been like, I don't know, just those quiet moments you sometimes have with yourself when you just know that you dedicated yourself to something. And there's like an honor in that.
Yeah.
There's an honor in just the effort,
Yeah.
without even thinking about the result or how it was received by other people. Just in the fact that you said you were going to do something and you followed through.
Yeah.
Like the simple things. When I was thinking about this episode, and I was thinking about this conversation, and I was reading through your Twitter and I was watching videos that you'd been on YouTube, there was something that I found quite inspiring. And this is what it was, right? We spoke about addiction. That this hunt for success, it can almost be likened to addiction, right? If you speak to anyone or you hear from anyone that gets addicted to anything, to drugs, they'll talk about the first high, how great this first high was. And then each additional high, it's diminishing returns until the point where it's like they'll take a hit and it doesn't even have an effect, right?
Which is even more frustrating because you tried to get it and you failed. So it's like a double whammy because you didn't get the hit, but you also failed in getting the thing that you wanted.
And so it's interesting. It's interesting. The journey of success is like that, right? Professionally, like the most joy you might have is even getting like your first job.
Oh yeah. It's like
Even though that's the least that you ever earn, that's when you have the least status, all of these things that you typically hear or you typically think that you'd want. But that first one was the best. And so I think a lot of the times, and I've seen this with my own journey, I've seen this with other people, one of the most difficult spots to leave and to if you're almost thinking about your path and you just go off in another direction, the difficulty is when you have something that's like pretty good. When you have like the lifestyle and you have the credit and you have the validation and you have the nice house and the money's coming into your account. And a lot of the times, the reason why we stay in a certain position is that we build up systems. Like at that point at 31 or 32, when you were like this young managing director at BlackRock, there's a certain system to your life. Your friends know you also for that position. You know, on your LinkedIn or online, you're known for that position. It's almost synonymous with you. It's part of your identity. And so the most difficult, even once you have the thought of this isn't the game that I want to play. The 40-year-old managing director isn't living the life that I want to live. Even once you have that thought, it's a whole different ballgame to actually make the change. Because that's your identity. That is you. And so when I was consuming that content, when I was doing the research, when I was listening to you speak, the thing that I wanted to know, I was like, when you're in that moment and you know that you need to make a change, how did you build the conviction, the courage, the confidence in order to actually follow through? Because that is where it gets tough, right? People, we don't think about that, of like having to walk into your office and actually give the resignation, to actually then tell your friends when they ask how BlackRock is going, oh, I don't work there anymore. Yeah. We don't think about those moments. Those can be the toughest. How did you navigate it?
So you've raised so you've raised a few points. One is there's a more, if I'm hearing you correctly, there's a more kind of pragmatic, like how do you actually stay the course and do the thing? And then the other, which is a much more complicated one, which is identity. How do you navigate the identity, or what I call the identity earthquake? Right. So I'll start with the pragmatic thing. I think it's actually pretty simple. I've seen versions of this tweet around all the time. It says, like, basically what the tweet says is Mr. Beast isn't successful because he found YouTube. Like, if you put Mr. Beast on Wall Street, he would have been successful on Wall Street. And if you put me in YouTube, I would have been successful on YouTube, right? And the reason is because those people, they just understand hard work. And so I think that it's a double-edged sword to be able to use that as a crutch. But the thing that gave me conviction to leave Wall Street to become a creator, and I didn't know that I was going to become a creator. I just was like, I'm going to try new things and see where they take me. The thing that gave me conviction is I work on my side projects. While I had a job, I worked on my side projects 1 to 4 hours a day, and I had a job that was 60 hours a week. So I showed up and I exercised every day, and I was a good dad and husband, or I thought it was. So I showed up every week and did 70 hours of work while keeping my body and my mind healthy as well, and my relationships. I think to me, my problem is not, I like having fun, but like, I don't drink much. I don't smoke. Well, I drink, but more to like forget this intensity that I'm describing to you. I don't go clubbing. Like, my life's very simple. It's like, I do work, I hang out with my family, and my hobbies are often, for better or for worse, aimed at making my work better. They've kind of fused into my work. So the point is that I just had a confidence in my work ethic. I just knew that I was going to show up. And I think that a lot of people who are successful in their crafts feel that, right? Because they just like, I just put in this, that I put in the 10,000 hours, right? So that's what I'd say about the work ethic. And I had A/B tested. I had tested that while I was working, right? I was trying to launch little projects while I had a 60-hour-a-week job. So I knew that I was serious, right? I wasn't playing that game where I'm like, if only I had more time, I would start a side project. I'm like, no, I'm going to make time right now to start a side project to see if I fucking like it, right? And a lot of people, they're like, if only I had more time, I would be a writer. If only I had more time, I would learn photography. Like, did you watch Succession? Yes. Okay. So I know you have an hour a week. Learn photography. Learn how to be a DJ. Take a tiny step. Prove to yourself that you'll make that commitment, right? Most people, they drop off at that point. You've probably seen that tweet, right? Most podcasts don't make it past episode 21. 99% of podcasts. So you're already in the top 1% if you show up for 21 straight weeks, right? Not hard, but also very hard, if you know what I mean. I felt very confident in my ability. I said to you before, like, I'm going to do my podcast. I'll do 100 episodes and then I'll start caring. And like, I don't even doubt that that's on the table. That's not debatable. It's going to happen. 101, I'm going to reevaluate. That's to be. So I trust myself in that regards. And that's from seeing myself do that since I was 12 years old. The identity one, that almost drove me back to getting a job. And the reason why is because, so here's what happens. You quit this job, like you said, your social circle, we're still living in New York at the time, we live in LA now, and you go to like, everything happens around kids' schools. You go to a kids' schools fundraiser, and like, oh, hey, Khe, like, I'm Joe, in New York. It's like, I'm a partner at, some fancy law firm. And I'm like, oh, cool, hey, what do you do? I'm like, well, I used to be a managing director on BlackRock, but now I write a newsletter. And oh, you write a newsletter? Like, what is it about? Like, I don't really know. I just kind of tell these stories, and how many followers? I have like 500 followers. Like, and again, no one. This is where the meditation and the mindfulness part comes in. No one actually knows what's going on in the other person's head. We'll never know. But when you have that identity vacuum, what I heard many times is like, you fucking idiot, or you're fucked, or you're irresponsible, you're an irresponsible father, or ooh, someone's going soul searching now, you know? I have no idea what was going on in that person's head. But again, the thoughts, the howling dogs come in. If your core is super howly, it's gonna be like, fucking idiot, piece of shit, you this, you fucked up this. Or if you're a little bit more grounded in your thoughts, you're like, maybe this person's projecting. Maybe the most likely outcome is he'll never see me again and he doesn't give a fuck. He's just making small talk. You'll never know. What you will know always is what went on in your mind in response to that comment. And so I got that comment. I got some version of that comment. And in fact, someone told me that behind my back, someone I used to work with said, watch what's going to happen. He thinks he can be an entrepreneur. He spends too much money. He's not going to cut it. And in 5 years, mark my words, his wife will leave him. That got back to me. So to some extent, you know what's happening in the thoughts, and that's where you need to be like, so what were my ballasts? What were the pillars that I could come back to? The number one pillar is like my work ethic. I just know that if it didn't work, I thought my backup plan was always I would go get like a corporate job at Facebook or Google, like controller or FP&A or, you know, some kind of financial job inside a tech company where I'd have better quality of life, lower pay relative to Wall Street, still very high pay. That was my backup plan. I'm like, oh, that's fine. Yeah. That's like a 1% of your life right there. The other one was like, your work ethic will help you pivot. You'll find new things and so on. But the biggest one is that, and I think you're an entrepreneur, is like, entrepreneurs just have this, you have to be a little deranged to be an entrepreneur because statistically speaking, it makes no sense. So you have to have like a little chip in your head that's off. That's basically like, I just trust myself that I will find a way to figure it out. I will navigate these difficult conversations. If people are judging me, they were not meant to be my friends in the first place. And I will be, emotionally resilient throughout this process as best as I can. And if anything, the thing that really, really helped me was not the skills that I developed. It was building that emotional resilience. So when I'm seeing that guy that I think's projecting something negative onto me, I can stand in my truth, stand in my confidence and be like, I know who I am. I know that my heart is good. I know that I'm loved. I know that I'm a resourceful person. I know I'll be fine. ... And by the way, I could always go get a job at Facebook and Google. And that ... just kept getting more ... because now it's just like it's a joke.
Yeah.
You never know though, right? Like something tragic might happen, and I might need income. I wouldn't have any shame in being like, you know what, the entrepreneurial thing didn't work for me. I'm gonna go get a job. So that's kind of there's the work ethic part. Again, dude, you could read anything you want about entrepreneurship and this. The thing about entrepreneurs is they just show up. They show up regularly. They show up when they're tired. They show up when they're hungover. They show up when everyone else wants to take a break. They show up when shit hits the fan, and they just keep going. That's it. That's the secret to entrepreneurship is there is no secret. Just show up consistently. Now, of course, there's different flavors. There's Mark Zuckerberg entrepreneurship and there's Khe Hy entrepreneurship, right? There's different flavors of it, but the thing that unites us is that we show up and we say what we're going to do. We do what we're going to say. We do what we say we're going to do.
You know what? I want to speak directly to what you were saying because it's something that I'm navigating in this exact moment. Which is, and the difficulty is in what you said, but it's also more. So the difficulty is when someone asks you what you do and you're giving the answer, and obviously like the chatter is, the howling dogs, as you call it, they're going off, right? I think that's part of it. The other part of it is, and I've realized this in my own journey, and then also speaking with a lot of entrepreneurs and creators and people that do this, which is when you see the finished, like polished product, like you see the influencer with the 1 million followers, like even maybe like Jake Paul and Logan Paul were like fighting this weekend. You might look at them with all their business lines and what they're doing, and their identity seems very set. And they seems like They know exactly what they're doing and they're making these strategic moves and everything is just working. Every fight is a new record and all of this stuff. However, I've seen this pattern in every entrepreneur and creator that I've spoken to, which is especially at the beginning, there's this prolonged like discovery phase where you're kind of doing something that you were pulled towards, like you were just you just gravitated towards doing it, and there's that love there, but you really don't know what you're doing, and you don't have the traction yet where it's like so validated, where you can be like, oh, okay, here's the playbook. You're really like figuring it out, and there's a lot of faith, and so it's not even just the judgment of other people. In your own mind, you're like, I have no idea what I'm doing. Like, I can't even put it into words. I can't even give you the one sentence. This is what I do, and this is the value of it. I don't even know. And when you put both of those together, the judgment from others with the fact that you're going out on a limb, it's complete just faith. That together, it can create a combination where you're like, what the fuck am I doing? And I think that is the difficulty. And I'm reminded there's this rapper that I just admire his mindset, Nipsey Hussle. And just obviously, like, when you see his background and where he grew up, the wisdom that he speaks with. And I remember someone in an interview on a radio station, they asked him, they were like, what made you successful? Like, how did you come from like the hood in LA and now you're known around the country, you've sold like thousands, millions of records. And he said, I would never want to give the illusion that I just had this ultimate poise or that I just knew what was going to happen. Yeah. My only distinguishing quality was that I just didn't quit. I just kept coming. Yeah. And I don't know. I think a lot of the times we make things more complicated than they are. That is the differentiating factor. And it's interesting, like a lot of the creators I've spoken to, there's this pattern where like before they started to achieve real success, 5 years minimum, these people were putting out content consistently week after week. And you go through so many emotional spikes as a creator where you'll put your life and everything and your energy and your heart into this content, and we're looking for the output, and it's like you're not getting the views that you want, or it's not getting the reception that you want. And so to do that over a long period of time, that is the game. That is the beauty of it. That is the accomplishment, the input. Yeah, it's just I'm curious, like in that moment where you'd considered going back, like getting another job, because I think my personal theory is that a lot of the times things are just going to come down to like personal choices, right? You're either going to do it or you're not. It's actually just really simple. And sometimes someone's going to give you something which is really tempting and you want to grab it and just go back to the comfort and just go back to the stability and go back to the security. But there's going to be a thought in your mind. It's going to be your instinct. It's going to be the first thought in your mind that either you reach out and grab it and go back to where you were, or you say, no, I'm going to stay the path. And so when you decided to stay the path, what was that factor? What was that decision that was like, I'm just going to stay in it? I don't know how we're going to go forward, but I'm just going to trust the process with this.
Yeah, I think that I'm having one of those moments now. Like, people are offering me jobs, and we could talk about the part of you never know what you're doing. Like, we went from a team of 6, we had like 600,000 in revenue last year, and we're like collapsed this year. So I'm very open with that, down to 2 people. So I'm a very much like, what the fuck am I doing moment, and I'm in year 8. So if you're in year 3 and you're like, what the fuck am I doing? I'm in year 8, and I had a peak, and now we're on the downside of that, and we're trying to find the next kind of the way to like relaunch the plane. But know that you're not alone in that. Like, lots of people are I don't know what the fuck I'm doing phase. In terms of going back, I think that it really comes back. I mean, for me, a lot of it is like, how do I want to live every moment of my life? Right? It is that kind of tiny moments. Like, how do I string together those moments? So there's a lot of things in my life that contribute to that, right? I don't work till 10:30, 11 Pacific every morning because I surf. I close my laptop at 6. So right there, it's like 11 to 6 is kind of, those are work hours. I'm thinking about work all the time, and not howling dog style, but cute, Pomeranian style. And so there's a bunch of non-negotiables that I have in my life, which is kind of me time, creative time, who I spend my time with, and so on. I would go back to a job if it could tick those boxes. If there was a job where I'm like, hey boss, don't try to reach me before 11 Pacific because I'll be surfing, and don't be pissed at me for that. And if there's an occasional, Asia needs to do a call, sure, then sure, because it's not violating the things, right? If it's like, you're not going to be an asshole to me, I'm not going to be an asshole to you. We have that understanding, cool. Weekends, I hang out with my kids. Yeah, if there's some kind of big thing on Monday, let me know. I'll look at it when they're sleeping. But let's not make it a habit to talk about work on the weekends. So those are the types of characteristics that I would kind of look at to see if I would go. And now with remote work, a lot more jobs tick those boxes than did 10 years ago when I left. In terms of the actual moment when you're kind of self-doubting yourself and someone's like, hey, do you want this job at Facebook or that? I think it's the same thing. I think the difference in that moment is the howling dog moment. Because if the dogs are loud, you're gonna run. You're gonna run for safety. But if you're like, hey, I know this pattern, yes, I know Confluence, you miss your revenue number, your stock market portfolio is down, and your big client that you thought was going to resign just canceled. You're like, hey, some version of this has happened before. And then again, I'm not just throwing all plans in the wind. I'm like, okay, let's look at, these are 3 things we could do. These are 5 things you could do. This is the cash we have to take us to this point, right? Please don't let my woo-ness distract from the fact that I take business very seriously. I just don't let the thoughts of business consume every waking moment of my life, right? And so again, when I said earlier that my greatest strength as an entrepreneur has been emotional resilience, in those moments when the job looks very sexy, the emotional resilience kicks in and is like, it can go in both ways. It's like, hey, we're actually in dangerous levels here. You're running your personal cash balance pretty low. Your kids are still young. Let's stop this. Let's just admit that this didn't work. Or it could be like, you're just having a moment. Like my daughter says, I'm having a moment. You're just having a moment. Sleep on it, journal on it, talk to a few people you trust. The moment will pass. It's probably just a bunch of howling dogs anyway. And to know, and what happens is that then you have a trust, because I'm not vilifying either path. Because to some extent, I can't control it. I can't control which path will show up. But because I know that when that juncture shows up, I will make the best decision possible, free of howling dogs, it gives me even more confidence in the moment right now. It's like it's almost like I'm unshakable.
It's really like it's presence, because you'll get to a spot, and I remember you even said this in one of the videos that I watched, which is the difference between being pulled or pushed. And a lot of the times, if you're experiencing being pulled, it's almost like there's a love there. There's something that you just love this thing so much that you're being drawn towards it. Maybe you love to write, I don't know, you love to paint, you like to do photography. It's pulling you towards it. With the push, a lot of the times, it's like you're running away from something. And so you can end up in a dynamic where you're actually running away from 2 things. On the one hand, you don't want to admit the failure of, oh, it didn't work and now I need to go back to my job. But then the other hand, you're business isn't working. So you're running away from two things. And I think when you can just be right in the middle and you can just be present and you can just think clearly and be settled, it's incredibly powerful. And it's interesting what you even said about like, and I'm going to butcher the wording. You said it a lot more eloquently, but what you said about happiness is really just presence, just being present in those moments, just quieting the voice, even a tad. Here's where I want to end. How old are you now?
44.
44. Okay. I'm curious for the 44-year-old Khe that's sitting before me now. If you had to go to the Khe that you spoke about in the beginning of this conversation, the Khe that said, I just wanted to feel like I belonged. And that was really the motivating factor behind all of the actions and micro actions that I made, was that feeling of just wanting to belong. If the 44-year-old Khe could go back and speak with that Khe, what would he tell him?
Thank you. Thank you for, thank you for kind of having this vision for like two people for our lives, two people speaking. Thank you for putting it all in place. Thank you for always being true to who you are. Thank you for loving others and for really like showing up with love and care. And it would just be kind of like, those deep bro hugs where you just like, you kind of like really like, you don't let go, like when everyone's like wondering, like, should I let go now? We're like, no, I don't want to let go right now. Like, this is how I want to communicate this feeling right now. I would flip that though, because I've been thinking a lot about this, and I would actually, especially if you come from this kind of like, I just want to belong, this childhood, it's like, what would the 12-year-old Khe say to the 44-year-old Khe? And I get teary-eyed when I think about it. The 12-year-old Khe will say to the 44-year-old Khe, say, I'm so proud of you. Like, we did it. Which is crazy, because the 44-year-old Khe doesn't usually think that he did it, right? He needs the 12-year-old perspective to be like, he's like, not only did we put out this, vision for your life in this way, but you did it like a million times better. And again, same language, on your own terms, while being true to yourself, being a high integrity, and showing up with love and care. Right? I'm proud of you, because I know that wasn't the easiest path, the one that you've taken, and it won't continue to be easy. And so it's a beautiful question, and I really encourage people, because I would say that for most people listening to their podcast, if you're in your 20s or in your 30s or in your 40s, if you talk to your 12-year-old version of yourself, you've probably exceeded their expectations already, with a whole life to live ahead of you.
No, that's beautiful, man. That's a wrap. It's been a pleasure having you, man.
Thank you, man. It's been so fun.
If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to the channel. We're having fire conversations every week on the podcast. Before we end the episode, a quick word from our sponsor, Free Agency. What if I told you there is a good chance you're leaving money on the table in your career? It would kind of annoy you a bit, right? Well, Free Agency aims to stop that. They represent and manage talent in the tech industry. Here's how they do it. First, they provide you with a dedicated talent agent. Think about this as your career quarterback. They understand you and your career goals. Based on that understanding, they bring you suitable interviews at top firms. You focus on smashing the interview, and together with their network, research, negotiation expertise, they will make sure you get a top of market salary. Stop job searching alone and start building your dream career today with Free Agency.